So today we're kicking things off with a conversation that we've had and revisited many times. It's about the voices in our head, the stories that we've internalized, and what happens when they start to sabotage the work we care most about.
We're calling this episode The Algorithm in Our Head. Because just like social media feeds us what keeps us scrolling, our brains often feed us old stories that keep us stuck, overwhelmed, disillusioned, and spinning in self-doubt.
And so in this episode, we're going to do something a little bit different. Nita's going to bring a real moment, situation that she's been navigating in her life and work, and we're going to workshop it together.
Little bit of a backstory. I've been in corporate sustainability since I was 23. I got into it because, like a lot of first generation British Indian kids, I was expected to pursue high paying professional career that my grandparents had worked really hard to gift me. And so that's how I ended up in a highly competitive graduate scheme at a global bank in London. And I remember sitting there in the posh offices near Tower Bridge, and I was researching European mortgages and mortgage products that helped very wealthy people secure property to use as holiday homes. And I just thought, is this it? Is this what I'm going to be doing with my life? But I did see something. I saw the role that money and business plays in shaping our society. And as a result of that, and I do feel incredibly fortunate that in those formative years of my career, that failed Democratic presidential candidate, Al Gore, was everywhere. He was running around talking about the inconvenient truth, talking about climate, telling packed out rooms of people that this was an issue that needed addressing. And I thought, if I wanted a career in business, then maybe my work needs to be doing something good within that context. And so you fast forward then 20 years, and I'm in my mid-40s. And honestly, it feels like everything I, and the countless other people before me have fought for is being unravelled. So sustainability was like a sideline issue. ESG, which was always quite a hard sell, it was always seen as tokenistic and performative, is now fully under attack. Net zero is being diluted. People are walking back from commitments, women's rights, trans rights, like all of it just feels under threat. When I sit in these rooms, sometimes in senior executive meetings, the lip service, the patterns, the delays, resistance dressed up as, oh, we're just being realistic. And I'll be honest, did any of it matter? What have I been doing? I appreciate that I am a perimenopausal woman and I might just be tired. Is this the end of my career in sustainability? Like, am I just done? Should I hand the baton over to younger people?
I think what you're speaking to is really widely felt by a lot of people within roles where they see themselves as attempting to create real meaningful change, right? And the reason we've called this episode The Algorithm in Our Head is to kind of hint towards there being a storyline and a narrative that's playing out there, certain assumptions that we have and certain biases perhaps that we sometimes run on autopilot. And becoming aware of what those might be could be really helpful. So I call it the algorithm because we spend so much time thinking and talking about the algorithm of social media and how it tends to focus in on like our deepest fears and the things that are going to get us to click on. And we rightly are concerned by what we're consuming in terms of the news and the media and how that tends to be distorted or hooks us in and takes us down to negative, difficult places. Yeah, we have this exact same thing happening in our own minds anyway. So I talk about it as the algorithm because just as important as the social media algorithm, what are the narratives happening in our own mind? Because there is something inherent, I think, within your question of, do I just need to do something radically different, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. Do I become a personal trainer or a massage therapist? Maybe I just need to not work in an office ever again.
Yeah.
There's something quite appealing about that.
Yeah.
But it disregards and it diminishes my entire career, my entire sense of purpose, which I know purpose is one of those really awkward words that gets bandied around quite a lot in corporate spaces. But I want to know that the work that I did was valuable. And at this stage in my life, to be able to use those skills that I've spent 20 years building to continue to do the work, because the work still needs doing. And I don't want to shy away from that. In fact, the work needs doing more now than ever. It's so much more important that we do the work now. I'm struggling to find the fight in me. I don't know if I can be in rooms anymore where I have to explain what the business case for sustainability is. If breathing clean air and having people being treated fairly needs to be explained. I'm a bit too cross for that at the moment.
Exhausting as well. And look, maybe at the end of this whole process, there is a decision where you take, and it's like, you know what? I put in a really good stint. I did what I could. I'm going to go and become that personal trainer. And that's the next phase of my life. And maybe that's okay. Maybe you find a new calling and a new purpose in helping people to be fit and healthy in their bodies. And that's totally wonderful and fine. But also maybe there is a path when we get some more clarity where we realize, well, maybe I don't need to turn my life upside down entirely. Maybe there's a way I can reframe or think about things differently, or find a way, that inner stability within myself, to say, you know what, I have the inner resource there to be able to stick at what I do, because I know I do it well, and continue in this, but make it work for me in a way. But I think a really interesting place always to start for me is maybe less the issues, but why do we care? And that might be a difficult question to actually answer, but I think it's interesting to always bring it back to ourselves. We can have it in the context of this stuff is happening in the world, but why does that impact us so much?
I feel like it's my duty to ensure that other people at least have the best start in life, which is just the basics. And I think if we can't get there, then we have failed as a society. And then I sort of go, okay, from that macro level, I'm not in Keir Starmer's government, I'm not a lobbyist, I'm not a political activist. So you then go back into, well, what can I do? And it leads to a sense of inertia, because I think I'm just quite tired of having to explain why this is unacceptable, because it doesn't seem unacceptable to clearly too many people.
Yeah, 100%. And that resonates so much with my story of burnout there, of that feeling like, why do I need to keep saying this thing that should be obvious? Right?
I mean, I think so.
I think so too. What you said there earlier around there's a duty, it feels quite, duty is a big word.
Yes.
I wonder what's behind the sense of duty.
Because Asian Indian people have become very successful, I sit somewhere smack in the middle of that with my, what is seen as quite fluffy sustainability career. You know, you could have been a hard-nosed investment banker or a surgeon, or, you know, it's not good enough just to be a doctor or a dentist. It's like you have to own your own practice. You have to have a string of shops. Do you know what I mean?
So interesting.
There's that level. So it's like, in some circles, I'm seen as really successful.
Yeah.
And in other circles, like the loser of this pack.
Yes.
It's so nice.
It's so interesting how you can literally switch from one situation to another.
And I'm the same person.
And with the same person. And so for me, it always comes back to, so in this circle, I'm considered successful. In this circle, not so much. So what about, all that really matters is how we consider ourselves, right? And then it doesn't matter. Yeah. Because also not just we enter in certain spaces and contexts whereby we might be lower in the pecking order, the success ladder, but even there's danger in like thinking out of our chest and like feeling like we're the most, we want to, I think, have a more realistic and just passionate stance on like wherever we are, we're trying our best, and that's okay wherever we might be.
But what's interesting about the fluffiness is money talks. So it was great when I was a sustainability professional and I was earning good money, but now I'm unemployed. It's like, oh.
And how it feels as well when we describe ourselves. If we can describe what we do and it kind of feels alternative and fluffy, but clearly by the way that we live, it shows that there's economic success, then there's like a pride to the fluffiness. And then, when that situation changes.
And I guess to bring it back to where I started, is given where we are with sustainability and how easily and quickly it was rolled back, what have I been doing? I'm conscious that when I started my career, I was on the heels of people that had been working at this since the 70s and the 80s. It was a little bit more about recycling and where the paper came from. But, you know, now recycled paper is just standard. We think about the circularity of packaging. We think about where the energy is coming from. More everyday people go, is it time to change our car from a petrol car to an electric car? Yes, some of that is driven by regulation because electric cars are more prevalent, but it's a choice now for people. Asking more complex questions like, I don't know what the most sustainable thing is. Whereas previously, at the start of my career, it would have been like you were a hippie, whereas now sustainability is much more mainstream. You've got luxury brands thinking about how they can be more sustainable. So in that regard, I think the generation of sustainability people that I worked alongside, that has done its job. But I would say that in this current snapshot in time, I don't feel or have been feeling quite depressed about whether or not I can continue working in this space, which makes it very hard for me to job hunt because it becomes very much what do I do? And I want to be really clear, I work in corporate sustainability. So I could go and work in a charity, but actually that isn't where my skill set lies. I know business. I'm good at figuring out problems and processes in people that work in those sorts of settings. And I've, thought about going to work for the government, but I think the pace of change there is too slow. I like the dynamism of business environments. And the same with charities. To be in a single issue charity feels like it would be a fine for a bit, but certainly not for the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really helpful line of thinking. Like tuning into what your skill set is and what makes you come alive and what issues you love engaging with. When I studied my sustainability masters, and so much of that focus was external. It was analyzing and assessing the economics and the politics and the media, the government. And we were looking for ways in which, where could we have the best impact? So much of my focus was there. I completely lost and forgot about myself. Who am I? What do I care about here? What is my skill set? What drives me? What would excite me in the morning to get up? And I think often the place where we can have the most impact is looking inward and just saying, what would a meaningful day look like? Even those days when I don't feel like huge amounts of progress is being made, I at least care about the issue. And progress isn't linear, right? We know this.
Sadly not.
Sadly not. And when we zoom out, we notice that there are all kinds of peaks and troughs along the way. But overall, like you said, the work that you do is standing on the shoulders of those who came before you. And the work that you do now, to some extent, couldn't have happened without those people doing that. And so even though now we feel like we're in a period of regression, there is no doubt that so much of the work that you've been doing has been mainstreaming, changing the conversation.
I remember when I first started working in sustainability, I would call the pub conversations of sorry, what do you do? Isn't that lip service? And, and as a result, I've become very good at normally keeping calm in these organisations, because I've had to be. That's what I had to do to justify why I was working in this space. Particularly when my first job was at a large global bank. So I suddenly realised that I was in the lion's den. And in that point in my career, the only people that were paying for sustainability roles were what I would consider the big and bad and nasty industries. So tobacco, oil and gas, manufacturing, cars. These were the places that they were we'll hire sustainability people.
I feel, you know what, I was actually part of a conversation. Well, I was the third wheel of a conversation on the weekend where we met, where you kind of had that conversation with someone, you might not remember. And they were asking about what you did. And, you're talking about sustainability consultancy and we're talking about B Corps. And there was a lot of pushback as to lip service. This is not where the conversation needs to be. It's a distraction, etc., etc. And I really felt for you in that conversation. We were in a beautiful place, walking through the countryside and in lovely nature. And I was like, oh, Nita's got to justify a really beautiful choice and stand to do something positive with her life. And it's funny because I think sometimes people who take a stand that feels purposeful and intentional to try to create positive change, they're put under the microscope much more than people who just go about their lives, just living kind of mainstream and just getting on with it. We have to justify ourselves, and it is that constant slog. Whereas if you just do a regular job and that dimension isn't a part of it. This stuff is heavy.
I mean, I don't remember that conversation at all. No. Clearly it was water off a duck's back.
Yeah, I suppose so. I wonder, now that you're currently looking for work, how that part of things feels different for you, having those kinds of conversations.
So I think this is where I'm at a real crossroads, because some of the advice that I'm getting from recruiters and hiring managers is to reposition the work that I've done without saying sustainability or ESG. So I could talk about devising strategies that solve problems. I could talk about communicating key messages to lead to cultural change within an organisation, or positioning in the market for products and services. So I can start to disassociate what I have been doing into more mainstream stuff. So if the primary goal is to find a role, I'm sort of prepared to do that. But I also know myself well enough to know that if I'm really good when I'm in front of somebody, I know when I've gotten jobs, it's because somebody sees a light go on inside of me and I project that energy. And that's what they're buying. They're buying that energy.
Because sometimes we try to get the spreadsheet out, pros and cons list, trying to analyze the whole thing.
Oh, and isn't that what ChatGPT is for? Can you decide for me, ChatGPT?
Yeah, literally outsource it all. And then sometimes it's just about pausing for a second and just being like, okay, let's just let the busy mind settle for just a second and just like kind of like drop these images of these two potential different paths. This doesn't necessarily have to decide anything for sure. It's just like a piece of information, right? And I wonder if there is a sense of this kind of just feels like it wants to be my next step.
The things that I have found most rewarding in the last 3 or 4 months have been the opportunity to use my skills and experience to help other people. So when they talk about your zone of genius or when you're in flow, I experienced that when we first reconnected again back earlier this year, where you needed a bit of help, like figuring out your products and your strategy. I find those conversations really easy. Yeah. And the reason I wanted to help you and was happy to do it pro bono was because I believe in the services that you're offering. And I've always been a person that's like, I'd rather put money in the hands of the people that are going to do good. What really gives me hope and value is that for the people that are like 2, 3, 4 steps behind me, it is a path I have already trodden. I have something of value to give them. And what it feels like to me is like maybe the big corporates know exactly what they're doing. And so it is not my place to go and fight the fight inside those organizations, but maybe in the smaller organizations that are founder-led, that are small and mid-cap, they're the ones that don't necessarily have the resources and the headspace to think about what purpose means inside their organizations. Maybe that is where I can use my commercial expertise, my sales expertise, my communications expertise, my business strategy expertise. And all of that is to say that all of those come with the foundation of coming at it from purpose and sustainability. That to me feels like I could do that till the cows came home.
And what gets in the way of you doing that?
Currently, a lot of self-doubt. These are different circles. These are not necessarily circles I move in. I consulted on household brands. I've worked inside agencies. So they're the ones that hold the relationships with these brands. How do I go and do that on my own? Is that even something that they need? Is that even something that they're focusing on? What's the way in which I reposition myself so that I can be an advisor to those people? Often with the sort of slightly smaller micro businesses, team of one, whilst they get it, they are also trying to do 100 other things. So neither have the bandwidth nor indeed the sort of financial resources to be able to pay me to do that work. And I'm not at a point in my career where I can be that kind of pro bono advisor. I mean, I'd love to be, but for the next sort of 15 to 20 years, I need to find paid employment.
So the companies need to be of a size where the founder or the leader isn't doing everything themselves. They have capacity and they need to have budget.
Yeah. And that's not to say they're not out there. It's foreign to me.
So it's a new space. Is there a place to start with that inquiry?
What I've been focusing on is speaking to people that work in venture capital firms and private equity firms. So they are currently investing in companies to help them scale and grow. Yeah. And so for them, part of that funding will be they know that they need to get X, Y, and Z person on board to help them do that. They won't be looking necessarily for sustainability people, but they would be looking for someone who can operationalize their sales or improve their processes. And I feel like going into those sorts of organizations and being able to deliver that in a very human-centered approach, a very empathetic approach, with purpose at its core. Have you thought about the impact of these things on something other than the bottom line? Is a way that I can do the more Trojan horsey approach of what I'm talking about. I think there's an interesting thing that happens in your mid-40s, and I don't feel alone in saying this, because I have a few friends and colleagues who are feeling the same, which is there is a drop-off in confidence. There is you're at a strange part in your career where you've got people that are between 4, 5 and 10 years into their careers. Have got more energy, they're a bit younger, they're a bit cheaper. The people that are hiring them are in their 40s as well, so would have a preference for someone slightly younger than them. So you sort of get put in a slightly odd box, and so then it's been hard to still feel relevant in that market.
So maybe it's kind of like an experimental mindset around it. Dip the toe in, reach out a few places, get some feedback, and see where it may lead, and then reassess. What is this telling me? Is it something to actually, what, this isn't the right route? I think the thing for me is that self-doubt a lot of the time, just learning to catch it early, just to be aware that it's operating there in the background as part of that algorithm is really helpful. And the quicker that we can catch it, the less time it's had to kind of influence how we're feeling and how we're behaving. And so just catching that and finding ways to let that storyline go a little bit, just to be aware that it's a storyline that's playing out can be really, really helpful. So a lot of the time with clients, I just get them to work with something that's super quick and simple, 10 seconds to just shift their focus away from the thought. And we're talking about like neural mental rewiring here. So each time we notice ourselves getting caught up in that negative, unhelpful story or pattern, whether it is the creeping self-doubt or this the disillusionment or the frustration, like that's all valuable information. But if it consistently derails us, there needs to be a mechanism by which we tell our brain, you know what, this thought right now is just trying to hijack me. And maybe there's a time at which I reflect upon that and I start to dig into, maybe this doesn't feel aligned and I need to explore that a little bit to see if the direction I'm heading in is the right one. We need to create some kind of a circuit breaker. We don't do our best work, we don't do our best thinking when we're ruled by our emotions, when they overwhelm us. Yeah. We tend to do our best work when we're aware of them and we kind of can process them and be with them. We can be with the discomfort, but they're not creating the narrative in our head. They're not directing our behavior. They're not overwhelming us. So for me, it's always a case of just catching that. I notice myself feeling this sense of dread and there's a thought here around like, what am I going to do? What is the next step? And when we're driven by those thoughts, it's really difficult to get answers to them. We really struggle to think our way out of them. There's got to be some kind of like a deregulation in the nervous system so that we can actually find a way out of it. So there's like this little bit, it's like we call it the hand on the hot stove. Once we realize our hand is on the hot stove, when we're caught up in that pain, whether it's emotional or physical, the sensible thing to do is to lift your hand off the hot stove, right? Like keeping it there and spiraling. Because actually, sometimes the spiraling can kind of feel comfortable. It can it feeds naturally.
Yeah.
And it is what we tend to know and sometimes love in a way, because actually calming that down and just being with the reality of the moment beyond the stories that feed the overwhelm can be more uncomfortable. So it's a bit like we shake up a snow globe. Okay, can we just let all the snow gradually settle so we can actually get a sense of what might be most helpful here? What's really needed? What do I want here? So it's always about getting really good at noticing what are the common thoughts and the common spiraling thoughts that tend to emerge. Now, note, this is really difficult to do when we're in a conversation with someone, when we're at a busy networking event. So we can train this stuff outside of the crazy busy situations like this. But in time, we can start to catch ourselves. Okay, the overwhelming feeling is here, caught it. The thought that I don't know what I'm going to do, panic is arising, caught it. And then we just got to shift. We've got to shift our focus. Okay, it's like a little bit of a mindfulness meditation kind of technique. Our brain can only really focus on one thing properly at a time. We think we're good multitaskers. We're not. We're just going back and forth between like 2 or 3 different tasks at the same time. But it's actually ping-ponging back and forth. So if I can shift all of my attention into something that's not a part of my thinking brain, but it's something part of my sensory experience, we've got these 2 different parts of our brain, which are quite distinct. If I can just shift, that's why stereotypically we talk about the breath so much. We talk about our feet on the floor. We talk about our posture. If we can just tune into how it feels to have our feet on the floor right now, how it feels to have our breath moving in our body, we're literally shifting our focus away from the spiraling thoughts into something else. It's mental fitness training. It's just consistent, these tiny little reps, getting stronger bit by bit, catching it, shifting out of it. And actually, an extra little tool that I use is celebration a lot. Each time we catch it, celebrates. That really shifts us from the negative to the positive. It's not pretending that the difficult situation or thing isn't real and it's not there. It's celebrating the fact that we caught it. We start to feel more empowered and more in control of our response.
Is there anything else that you want to say before we wrap up? I just have one sort of closing reflection, which is something that you said earlier around not needing to totally reinvent myself.
Yeah.
Because I think that feels a little bit like running away. And that actually it is about focusing on the things I can do rather than the things that everyone is telling me I can't do.
Sure. And I loved it when you told me that you chose to paint your units and cabinets because A, they do look beautiful, but also, sometimes that stuff is okay. Again, as that kind of circuit break kind of, well, yeah, it feels good to do things we feel accomplished at.
Yes.
Or that we can just pour our focus into. Just like I was talking about that 10 seconds with the body and the breath and the celebration. Saying, you know what, right now I'm not in the right frame of mind to be having these conversations, to be going on LinkedIn and that's not what is the best use, what's really needed right now. You know what? I wanted to paint these things anyway. I need to find the time. And actually, probably if I come back in an hour, I'll be much better resourced to go and continue what I was doing.
So that's it from us. We'd love to hear from you about what came up for you. Feel free to write to us, or indeed just share your own stories. And if you want the in, out, forward practice that Sol was talking about, we'll put that in the show notes.
Yes. Thank you for being with us. Keep going gently, and we'll see you next time before we burn out.